everyone, I'm Josh with Northern Frogger, and this tank behind me here is my newest dart frog vivarium. This one's pretty cool because it's actually a brand new terrarium design from Terra. This is part of their new Frogs & Co product line, which is a couple of terrariums and a few other products specifically designed for frogs and amphibians and bioactive setups. And if you'd like to know more about the terrarium itself, I actually did an unboxing video where I unpackage this thing and talk about all the new features and why they're kind of perfect for dart frogs. And you can also find more info about it on the website frogsandco.com, as well as information on the other products in the Frogs & Co line. But this video is more focused on the build and setup itself, showing you how I got it to here. And I have to say, I'm really loving the big one-piece glass front on these new tanks for really nice display vivariums. But as of right now, this tank doesn't actually have any inhabitants, but it has been set up for a few weeks now and it is ready to go, so make sure you guys watch till the end because I will be releasing the frogs into the vivarium later in the video. But first, let's rewind a few weeks back to when this was just a bare tank, and we'll go through the whole build process and show you how it all came together. So we'll start where most vivarium builds start, and that is with laying down the foam for the background here. I'm using the Great Stuff Pond and Stone black expanding foam. Just laying down a nice base layer across the whole back, and then kind of building up the corners a little bit. And then I was kind of building up a couple of shelves across the back too, just because I wanted this background to kind of look like rock in the end. So here I am doing the other side now, just building up the corners a bit. And then building up those shelves along the backs and sides a little bit more. I think I ended up going through 2 cans of foam for this build. So this was with all the foam in. This is what it looks like when it was all expanded. And then the next step is to just come in and carve the shape I want. So as I mentioned, I kind of wanted it to look like stone or kind of a rock wall. So just carving away all of the kind of rounded part from the foam expanding. Trying to cut some angles into it to kind of make it look like cracks in the rock. And I was just using a serrated steak knife to do this carving. It ended up looking pretty good. It wasn't quite the way I pictured it initially, but I'm still pretty happy with it. I like the kind of shelves in the back here and the texture. Lots of room for the frogs to climb and spots to put moss like I'm planning to put in the background hereafter. So the next step was to cover it up with the dry lock to seal in the foam, and then I'm coloring it with the Quikrete cement color. This coloring was really hard to find where I'm at for some reason, so I could only find the charcoal and the red colorings. So for this one I'm just using the charcoal, but because the dry lock is kind of a gray base, I can mix in varying amounts of the dye to kind of get a spectrum of colors from almost black to a very light gray, just depending on how much dye I use. So this first coat used a lot of dye. I wanted to get it almost as black as possible. And then yeah, just using a paintbrush, worked my way around the entire background, just putting a nice thick coat on to try and seal the foam up as much as possible. And I ended up doing 2 coats of this initial really dark one, letting it dry for a couple hours in between. And you can see here as it dries, it really lightens up quite a bit, and it becomes a much flatter color instead of the glossy look that it has when it's wet. So then I mixed up a lighter color with less of the charcoal dye, and then just kind of lightly brush that on a few of the high spots to create some highlights. And then I mixed up an even lighter gray and just kind of went around and did the same thing, even lighter, just putting a little bit of this light color on the very top, just to give it a little bit of a natural weathered rock look. And I think overall it turned out pretty good for only having the one color really, but yeah, this was basically it. So after letting it fully cure for a few days, the next step was to start putting it together. At this stage, you're going to want to install the bulkhead and drain if you haven't already, because the next step is to do the substrate. Now, normally I would use a leca drainage layer with soil on top, separated by a screen mesh. But for this tank, I'm going to try something completely different and just try using this substratum. as kind of an all-in-one drainage layer and substrate. And this stuff is basically the same as the fluval stratum, which is meant as a planted aquarium substrate. So it should hold up really well to the moisture levels in here, as well as provide lots of nutrients to the plants. And I think as long as I make sure to keep the water level low enough and not let it get full so that the substrate is completely saturated, it should still have enough pore space in there to allow plant roots to breathe, as well as it will provide a ton of surface area in there for springtails to colonize. So I think it's going to work pretty well, but it is still a bit of an experiment, so I will have to wait and see how it works out long term. But so far it seems like a really quick and easy way to do a substrate for a dart frog tank, and about a month in, it's still working out really well for me. And then I'm going to be using this Frogs & Co. frog pond. So I'm just going to sink that right into the substrate there. And then cover up the whole thing with leaf litter so the frogs aren't directly on the substrate. This was the equatorial forest floor, but I just used the leaf portion of it. And then the next step was to start planting. This was an old springtail culture that I forgot about and started growing moss. So I just kind of let it go, and I'm going to use it for this build. As well, this was a tub of moss that I started culturing quite a while ago in preparation for this build, because it's kind of what I had in mind. I wanted this kind of rock look background with just moss growing up in all of the cracks. So yeah, this step was basically just taking all that moss you just saw and spreading it out in all the cracks of the background there. And I think it turned out pretty good. I could have used even more moss, but as it grows in over time, I think it'll look even better and better. So once all the moss was done, I could start installing the hardscape. And I was going to go pretty simple on this build here. Just using a couple pieces of this wood here. I think this is the Malaysian driftwood. As you can see here, just playing around with a few different configurations to find something that looked good. I basically just settled with this, a couple pieces of wood and the frog pond there, and a bunch of leaf litter. So really simple hardscape. So then we're just going to put a few bromeliads and other plants in there. And I'd love to tell you what these plants are, but unfortunately I've actually forgotten the names of most of them. But then after it was kind of planted, I made sure to soak it down with the mister, and kept it really soaked for the first couple weeks to really make sure that moss was going to take. Then just started planting a few broms in. This background is kind of nice because they just poke a couple holes in and then stick the broms directly in there. I ended up rearranging the broms a little bit from when this shot was taken, but it looks mostly the same. So yeah, this is basically it. The last step was to add some springtails, but then after it grows in for a couple weeks, we can release the frogs. So I know a lot of you are curious about the lighting that I use, so I should also mention that on this tank I'm using the Terra sky light. It's designed specifically for planted terrariums. Seems to be working pretty good so far. It's really bright. It's also adjustable from 3000 to 25,000 Kelvin. It comes with a remote control, and it's also got some other cool features like kind of a lightning storm effect too, so pretty happy with it so far. So the frogs that are going into the new tank are currently in this vivarium. This is a 12 by 12 by 18 Terra. And there's actually 4 frogs in here, and it's really too small to have 4 frogs in here, so we're going to catch all 4 of them out and put them into the new tank. And as you might have guessed from the bromeliads in the new tank, it is going to be thumbnails that are going in there. These are the Ranidomea fantastica Monte Cristo, really cool looking frogs. But the challenge here is going to be catching these guys out of here without having to completely rip this tank apart. Alright, so I got the glass cleaned up so you can actually see what's going on in there. Trimmed a couple of the bigger leaves out of the way of the front to make it a little bit easier to reach in there. And then threw a few of these film canisters in there. I'm just going to be working in the frog room for the next few hours here, so I'll just keep an eye on this tank and hopefully I'll be able to catch a couple of them going in and out of these canisters, and if I'm quick enough I can kind of reach in, cover it up with my hand before they jump out, and then I'll be able to transfer them to the new tank. Alright, so there's actually a couple of them up in this top corner here. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Okay, he's out of the tank on the floor now. Managed to catch him as he was hopping across the floor. He's got some dog hair on him, but seems no worse for wear. So I'm just going to put him in this container with just some damp paper towel for now. Hopefully try to catch the other ones so I can release all of them together into the new tank. And there's actually still one more up in that corner. So get my hand back there to try and block it. Oh god, okay. Got another one. There's still one more up in this corner. So let's see if we can make it to 3. Okay, just moving. Come on, no. Okay, perfect. Alright, so that was great. I got 3 out of 4 out of here already. It's only been like half an hour since I put those film canisters in there. And I haven't really had to use them yet. I just got lucky that 3 of them were just all hanging up in that corner and none of them moved while I was herding the other ones out of there. But no idea where the last one is right now. Hopefully he shows himself soon and we can catch him out of there too and release them all into the new tank. Alright, so I haven't had any luck catching that last Fantastica yet. I've seen him a couple times, but every time I go to open the door he just disappears back into the background. But it's been a few hours and I didn't want to leave the other ones in that cup for too long, so I figured I would just release them into the tank now and I'll catch that other one when I can. So I just went to grab the cup to go and release them and found this. In the few hours that they've been sitting in the cup here, they actually laid a clutch of eggs. So when I went to grab this cup to check on these guys and release them, I found that they've apparently laid a clutch of eggs right on the paper towel here. I didn't hear or notice any calling or anything like that, but I'm really surprised to actually see these guys lay in this situation. Usually they have to feel a little more comfortable than being in a completely sparse deli cup here, but I guess that's why I was able to catch them like that. They must have been about to lay eggs anyway in that little corner, and so they just continued on after they were caught, I guess. But I'm still going to release them into the terrarium now, so I can collect those eggs and hopefully they will hatch separately. So yeah, let's get these guys released. Before we release these guys, just one more thing I wanted to show you really quick. I did end up just putting a little bit of tape over these unused grommet holes in the back here. I don't think it would even be an issue, but there is a tiny gap there and these thumbnails can squeeze into some pretty tiny gaps. So just rather be safe than sorry, and I just covered those with a tiny bit of electrical tape just to make sure they're not going to be able to escape out of those rubber grommets. Other than that, I think this top is pretty secure. I don't really have to worry about it anywhere else, I don't think. It's not wasting any time. Alright guys, so I think that's going to do it for this video. I was hoping to get a little bit more footage of the frogs in there, but they have just kind of hunkered down and don't want to come out right now. Kind of expected. The Monte Cristos are kind of bold, but they are thumbnails, so they do tend to hide a little bit, especially after being caught and moved today. It's understandable that they're going to be kind of hunkered down for a while. The couple glimpses that I have got of them, they're kind of hiding out in the leaf litter, just picking off springtails, which is good, I guess, but yeah, I was hoping to get a little more footage of them, but hopefully what I got was good enough for you guys. But yeah, that's basically going to do it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. Let me know what you think of the new tank here. But yeah, we'll have to get some more footage of them in the future. I do want to come back to this tank because I do want to talk about how the Broms are doing under the Terra Skylight, and about how this new substrate drainage layer method is working out in the long term. We'll see if I run into any issues with that or if it goes really well. I'll be sure to let you guys know about that. But that's about all I have for you today. So let me know what you think of the tank there. And let me know down below if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions for future videos. And until next time, happy frogging.